Welcome, DAPR 300R, the digital audio industry lecture series. I'm Professor Bryan Sansom. With us today is Marko G. And Marko G is local here to Utah, based out of Provo, and has a recording studio there. And why don't you tell us, let's just jump right in, tell us how you got into the audio industry.
So I started as a musician and I thought that I was going to be a rock star. I thought I was going to be in a band. I thought I was going to play drums in a band. And when I moved to Los Angeles, um, I went to UCLA, and for the first few years, I started doing gigs around town, just trying to like make some money and, being in bands and stuff like that. And what ended up happening is I realized, if I want to make any real money as a drummer, that I'm gonna have to tour. It's like, you're gonna be gone all the time. So I decided, I want to have a normal life. I don't want to be on the road like all the time. So I decided I want to get into recording and production instead. And I decided I wanted to kind of work more on like sequencing and beat making and stuff like that. And I realized that as a musician, I could play the instruments on the recordings. I could play multiple instruments on the recordings and, create entire productions that way. So that's kind of how it started. And I think my first like real bit of money I ever made was I did some music for like an infomercial, and the infomercial aired like tons and tons of times on, in the nighttime or whatever, like while people are being insomniacs or whatever, that's when they kind of get you, right? And they had these like half-hour programs, and my music would just be laced with, all these programs. And I remember my first check was like $10,000, and I'd never made any kind of money even near that. And I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I need to keep doing that because that works. Because I mean, if you play a gig, okay, back then that was like maybe 2004, 2005. If you played a gig in Los Angeles and you were a drummer, you'd be lucky if you got $150. So I was like, okay, that's not gonna work. So yeah, so that's basically how it started. As I started as a musician and just went into production. I figured, even even if nobody ever needed a drummer ever again, somebody always needs somebody to record. Something is always needed to be recorded. We're recording right now, right? Something is always needed to be recorded. So even if I were just, I said to myself, even if I were just recording books on tape or podcasts or whatever, like somebody would pay me to do it. So that's kind of how I got into it.
So you started off as a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go on tour ever?
No.
Tour life is hard life. I've done it, so I know. What like when did you start playing the drums?
When I was really young, I think I got my first drum set when I was like 8 years old. It was like had Kermit the Frog's face on it.
Smack.
Yeah, it was like back when Toys R Us used to be a thing. Yeah, my parents bought me a drum set from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, nothing wrong with the Toys R Us drum kit as long as it's something to bang on.
Right.
I mean, you see, other than outside of the U.S. and people play drums on buckets.
Yeah.
And they get really good at it.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with starting off on it. Did you start off on a Kermit the Frog?
Something similar, yeah. I play drums too.
He's a drummer.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden he's got this drummer. Yeah, that drummer connection. What made you shift out of Los Angeles back to Utah?
So, two things. One was that the main one was that I got engaged to somebody who was from here, and she already had kids. So we thought, I mean, Los Angeles is it's a nice place to do business. Raising kids is a little different. It's a little more, I mean, it's a little more family friendly here. So we thought, okay, well, why don't we just, plus they had like family, extended family cousins, so we thought, why don't we just move there? I'll keep my studio in LA and I'll just keep servicing my clients down there. And I'll just kind of fly back and forth a little bit. Let's see how that goes, right? And then what ended up happening is I came here and there was like all this work and like had all these clients that wanted to do production with me and, you know, Lindsey Stirling was one of them. And then it just kind of like took off from there. And then I ended up eventually phasing out of the studio in LA. Now, the one thing I did notice is that just the type of music that's being done here versus there is a little bit different. Like the content is a little different. And so being like, like a church member, I was, and I was a new church member, I was started to kind of phase out of some of the more explicit lyrical content stuff. I was like phasing out of that and trying to make like more clean stuff. And so this location had more clients that were into that,
right,
more than the other. So I ended up kind of, it's funny. So when I was living there, I was trying to save money on rent. I found literally the cheapest place you could rent in LA. It was $600 a month. It was right next to the UCLA campus. It was a deactivated fraternity house. And they were just renting out rooms to just anybody, straight up anybody.
What year?
This was in probably between like 2000. Well, I graduated in 2002, and then I stayed for another few years, and I moved here in 2009. So I was just straight up trying to save as much money on rent because the rent will kill you, right? You cannot buy equipment, you cannot buy nice stuff if you have a really high rent. So it was this brick building, and it was a Phi Kappa Sigma, I think it was called. And it was just deactivated, totally deactivated, and they just wanted to make money. And so I rented the one room. I had $80,000 worth of music equipment in this one frat house, and it was a shared bathroom for the floor. I mean, it was about as ghetto as you could, get without being unsafe, So, but then what happened is I sold, like, I had all these analog synths that were really good for like West Coast, hip hop, R&B. And I sold everything because electro house was like the next thing and nobody cared about hip hop. It was that at that point when like, and so I sold all my analog synths. I think I kept one. It was a Virus TI, which I eventually sold also. And I had like a bunch of money and a U-Haul, and I just came back to Utah, and I go back there every once in a while. I still have some clients I worked with that I see every once in a while, but a lot of them are here, and then some of them are also not even from Utah. So yeah, it's different now because you have programs like Audio Movers and Zoom, and I do remote sessions probably at least 70% of the time now. Somebody used to live here, they moved away, we're still working on some songs, they fly out every once in a while to do vocals, and we use Audio Movers to stream the audio, and we use Zoom to do the video, and it works great. I share my screen, they can see what I'm doing. It's a really good way to do it.
Talk a little bit more about that because we don't cover that
Sure.
in this program. I mean, it's really hard to try to do a remote session with students and say,
Yeah,
this is how it's going to work, because it
Sure.
just doesn't work very well. Talk about your experience doing this. How does that change versus when the person's in studio with you?
so I prefer people to be in the studio, but I like the convenience of them not having to be there because, you know, you want to be able to work with people who are not so close. And it makes it convenient. There's certain things you can't do. Obviously, you can't track their vocals. You know, you don't want them tracking their vocals at home and sending them to you. Don't do that. Not a good idea. But like, I mean, you can edit. That's really great. It's actually nice. Okay, so do you guys know what vocal comping is? You guys heard of that, right? Does anybody not know what vocal comping is? You can raise your hand. I'll explain it. Okay, good. So anyway, a lot of times if the vocalist is there listening to what you were doing, they can often, you know, they can kind of jump in here and there. Oh, well, you know, hey, there's that one thing I wanted to hear or whatever it is, right? And I find that to be, I mean, obviously, you know, I can comp vocal, anyone can comp a vocal on their own, but it's nice to have the performer there so that they can kind of give their 2 cents. And when they're online, they can hear it if they can hear it in perfect quality on their headphones, something they're used to listening to, then they can, you know, kind of give feedback and stuff like that. But I think that having people in the studio is always best because they're hearing the same speaker that you're hearing, you know, and I think speakers are a big deal. I think they are. I think one thing I kind of, as I was coming here, there was a couple things I wanted to make sure to let you guys know is that if you're sitting in front of a speaker, in front of a set of speakers that are not telling you what's going on or they're lying to you, you know what I mean? You're gonna be in a hard situation. I can tell you a story about when I was like, many years ago, I did a remix on this track and there was this guy named DJ Nice and he was really cool. I liked him. He DJ'd a bunch of parties in Los Angeles and clubs and stuff. And I showed him my remix. He said, "Oh man, you did this remix?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "This remix is amazing. Like, oh, you got to release this." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, great." Um, and I had a CD of back when we used CDs. I had the CD and we were in Las Vegas and I saw this DJ that was playing at this pool party. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna go see if this guy will play it. I want to see how this crowd reacts to my remix, right? So I take this CD and I bring it to the DJ. I say, "Hey, like I got this CD. Like, would you be willing to play it? It's a remix." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll check it out." I was like, "Okay, cool," which never happens, right? So he puts the CD in the thing. He's listening to it. And he's like, "Okay," and he decided he was gonna play it. So he goes and he plays it. Sounds terrible. Sounds awful. I'm like, "What is wrong with my mix? What the heck happened?" I'm like, "It sounded good in my studio. I thought it sounded good in my headphones. I thought it sounded good. I don't know what happened, right?" Well, the truth is that, you know, the mix you think might sound good in your studio, it may not translate, if that makes sense, to other systems. So really, if you want to get quality mixes or you want to know that your production is really working and you've covered all the frequency ranges and your low end is enough and your high end isn't too much and all that, like, you have to have the right set of speakers. So I recommend when you guys get to that point to audition as many speakers as you can, research like what are the best ones, what are the main ones that the big studios use. Let me listen to them, bring them in. I don't care. You put it on a credit card, have them send it over, send it back, whatever you got to do to hear them. Go, fly to Nashville, fly to LA, fly to wherever they have a place where you can hear these, right? And hear the speaker, listen to stuff you're familiar with, right? And then just like, pick the speaker that you feel is giving you the clearest vision of like, okay, I'm hearing the bottom end, I'm hearing the top end. This is how I expect this to sound. I know what it sounds like on my headphones. I know what it sounds like in my car, and so that's really important. So this was the problem. I had a pair of NS10s in a crappy untreated room, and that's all I had. And I had a subwoofer, and who knows how that subwoofer was, like tuned to the speakers. So, yeah, so my mixes were not good. I thought I was hearing something else, and not only that, but I just wasn't even really trained as a mixer. Like, if you want to be a really great mixer, you have to kind of be trained. It's not really something you can learn on your own. You kind of have to be under the wing of somebody who really knows what they're doing, to teach you. I mean, just number one, like balance. Okay, right? What is balance? What does that mean? Who even cares about balance when they're mixing, right? Unless they were trained to mix, right? So the first thing you do as a mixer is you say, okay, I'm not gonna, most people what they do, which I used to do, you would go and you say, okay, here's the kick drum. Okay, now I'm gonna make that kick drum hit. I'm gonna make that thing slap so hard. I'm gonna do this, and then you sit there and you tweak on that kick drum for like 2 hours. You're like, okay, that kick drum sounds amazing. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the snare, and you isolate the snare, right? Okay, so that's not what you do. That is a way to set yourself up for a 2-day mix that doesn't sound good in the end. So what you do is you listen to the whole mix. You put all the faders up, you start balancing. You don't touch EQ, you don't touch reverb, touch nothing. You just do balances, just volume, volume, volume. And you get that track to sound as balanced as you can, you want the bass, loud enough, but not covering the vocals, not covering the kick drum. The hi-hats should be up there, but it shouldn't be covering the vocals, whatever, right? So you get the balance right. Now that you got the balance right, now you can hear what really is a problem. Now you can hear, okay, this synth pad or this piano has so much low end in it that I can't really get it too much louder, because if I get it any louder, it's now getting in the way of the kick drum, or it's getting in the way of something, the low end of the vocal, whatever it is, right? So now you can say, okay, now I can suck out some of the low end of the piano or the synth pad, and now I can get it a little bit louder. Now I got it where I want it, stuff like that. Or you can hear, okay, the vocal doesn't have enough top end. Okay, now we can add more top end because we realize. So there's an order to things, right? And so I didn't know any of that, right? And so of course, combination of training, combination of crappy room and a crappy room and a crappy room, and not the right speakers.
And brick fry house.
And now, yeah, and so I go there and I play this track and it sounds like garbage, and so, so that's kind of, you learn through these experiences,
Yeah, if you guys are local, which we are here, but if you're watching online, Performance Audio in Salt Lake, you can audition about 8 different pairs of
Great,
monitors.
perfect,
So they do have a little room you can go in.
That's
and check that out.
amazing.
So you don't have to go very far,
fantastic.
just a, good
Yeah.
35-minute drive.
Yeah, and listen to songs that that you are familiar with, that you've heard a bunch of times, that you like the mix. That you're like, oh, that one song, like the low end on that song is amazing. That's the song you want to hear on those speakers.
So what would you say your specialty in the audio industry is? What's your specialty?
I would say probably my specialty is vocal tracking, mixing, and production. That would probably be my main.
Okay, so those 3 areas, but you talked about you found success through sync licensing. as well.
I did.
So do you still do sync licensing stuff, or are you more focused on the production with artists?
I'm more focused on production with artists as of right now. But some of that music ends up with sync licensing.
Yeah. You guys know what sync license means? Is this a new term to you? What's a sync license?
So, so let's say somebody is looking, okay, like a TV company, TV production company, video production company, they're looking for music for their content, whatever it is. It could be a TV show or it could be a series or a movie or a commercial or something like this. And they're looking for music, right? So you happen to have the luck and you happen to be the needle in the haystack that was found by the music supervisor who's in charge of the show. And the guy says, hey, do you have something like, sounds like this? And so you have this particular thing they need. And let's say, I was talking earlier this morning with a couple guys, and one guy said he worked on like rock stuff, like more like punk vibes. So let's say that's what you do, right? So you've got a bunch of recordings, and somebody really needs something that sounds like that. So they will license it from you. They don't necessarily buy it off you, but they license it. So they're not the exclusive owners. You're still the owner of your music. They can pay more and have an exclusive license. They can do that. But really what they're doing is they're borrowing your music to use in their program. And some of those programs will, in addition to the fee that you get, will also generate residuals or royalties, what they call it, right? And so every time it airs, there's a couple companies, there's BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, and they kind of monitor what's going on and how much your music is playing. Now, they have to receive the right paperwork so they can track it. So the company that licenses it also has to send a cue sheet into these companies, and they then will know to track it. They will look for it, they will track it, they will see how many times it played, how many times it aired, and they send you a check. So it's pretty great.
Yeah. So if you guys think that the only jobs in audio are like the production, the studio, these kind of things, actually, there are people who their entire job is when the TV show airs, they will go through TV show, and every time there's a music cue, they will state on a cue sheet when the music starts, when it ends, the exact length of time it is, and then they'll attribute it to the different people who wrote the music, and then that gets sent into the network. The network then has to distribute that out to, again, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, these different agencies, which then allows you to create and generate some money. So there's something that you guys, maybe you are very creative, have a lot of songs, and you just don't feel like you want to perform a lot of the work that you do live. There is another way for you to create and share music that generates income, as Marko has described, that he found. And yes, every time it goes back on TV, you get another little bit of money. I collect royalties. I was laughing the other day because I think it was last week. I got a royalty check for like $1.70. So I'm getting rich, It's an email now that just says we made a direct deposit to your bank account. And I look at it and laugh. And
that is great.
I'm rich. I got $1.70, so I can not even buy a soda. But that's just a different avenue that he's brought up that, I think is something that you guys have the opportunity to look for. And thanks for sharing that, because
Sure.
I a lot of times we get focused on how you got into this. What's some advice you could give to these guys that would avoid some of you already said some, but
Sure.
avoid some of the pitfalls that you got into
yeah.
as you started in the industry?
It's a good question. Let's see. So I would say just do quality work. Just don't skimp. Do quality work. If there's something you need to make the work quality, find a way to get it. Just do whatever. I mean, okay, don't do whatever, but do what you need to do within reason. That's that's going to give you the quality and so that you're proud of your work. It's really tempting for people in the audio industry and music industry to just get the job done. And I know a lot of people who do that. They just want to be done and move to the next, right? But I can tell you right now, when when I first started working with Lindsey Stirling, she didn't have a lot of money to pay me, right? So, so I could have easily said, you know what? This money is worth this much work. So I'm only gonna do this much and see you later, thank you, you know? And I know people who would take that approach. But I didn't do that. I said, you know what, I don't care about the money, I don't know any other way to do it. Maybe it's just my personality, I don't know. But I just like to do a really great job regardless of what I'm getting paid. Because I know that people will hear that. And hey, who did that? Who worked on that? It's like you're advertising, right? So I did the best job I could. I was happy with the result, and I'm really glad I did that because then I ended up, she ended up becoming really successful, and we ended up making like really good royalty money, because the effort was there. So my number one thing is just make sure whatever you're working on, and that you do the best you can and be proud of your work. And the other thing is if there's something that you really don't want to work on, you just don't do it. If you're not, don't feel like you have to. If you got a buddy who's like, oh man, can you get me a verse on that track or what? And he sucks, like he's your buddy. I know it's hard, but it's just, don't do stuff that you don't like to work on. If you think it sucks, just be real with the people around you. Be like, you know what? I really don't like this. I really think this sucks, and just tell them, be real with people. And, if you don't like it, don't do it. Don't waste your time,
If there's somebody out there that wants to do that, and you don't have to. Like, and I've told you guys these stories before, but like, just don't burn yourself out on stuff that you don't have a passion to do, because that will just steal your soul. You won't have the desire to keep working on stuff.
It takes too long.
Yeah.
Music is too time consuming. It's too much, So make sure the time is spent in something that, I mean, if you're getting paid really well and you're fine doing it, because, okay, okay, fine. But if you're not really getting paid much and it sucks, that's a no-go. I was gonna ask, how long is the class, by the
So
way?
we're gonna go till 50 after is when it ends, but sometimes we'll run a
Okay.
little tiny bit long, but usually right about now we start turning over to students to see if they have
Yes.
any questions.
Start asking
Eric's
questions
got a
if you like.
question.
Yeah, I think I always ask this one to about every guest, but is there any skill that you feel like you used to have that you didn't continue to refine as your career went on, that you were like, oh shoot, I should have really kept up with this, or like any
Right,
kind
right.
of thing where like later on you're like, I should have gotten started on this
Right,
sooner.
right. Well, I mean, I think everybody probably has some skill that they're like, oh, I wish I was better at that. But the truth is that if, so I'm a big fan of teams, like building a team. So if there's something you feel like, "Hey, you know what, I'm not amazing at that, but I know this one guy who is."
So before you came in,
You know
at
what I
the
mean?
beginning of this class, I said, hey, we have a mutual friend, Randy Slaw, who was on in this class last year,
Yeah.
and we were talking. I said, what was your answer about Randy? When I said,
Yeah,
what does he do?
I said he makes my life easier.
And
Yeah.
what does Randy do for you that
So-
makes you like?
So Randy is awesome on the keyboard, as he makes like fantastic sounding chord shapes. He's great at coming up with ideas. And so it's just nice to have a guy like that in the studio. So I'm a drummer, right? So I'm not a piano player, right? So I can handle a lot of things on the production, and I can program synthesizers, but when it comes to actually like really playing the piano, I really want a piano player, you know? So I would say that most of the skills, just to answer your question, most of the skills that I started with, that I continued with, I think have just kind of improved over time because I'm using them all the time. I decided to go into music, so I am using them. But when it comes to like piano playing, like this is a skill that, oh yeah, it'd be nice if I had that, because
That's the one. I
It's
looked
hard to
at, too.
predict these things when you're young, though. When you're young, you don't really know what's in the future. You don't know what you're gonna be doing, so it's hard to predict what. It's kind of, like the whole hindsight thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that would be the one, but like I said,
Every producer I've ever
find someone to do it.
spoken to that isn't from the keys world says the same thing.
Yeah.
I wish I could play the keys better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cause like, you kind of already answered it earlier too, it's like the whole mixing thing,
Yeah.
just. Cause I know like, when the question was answered, asked before, not by me, like I said, it was the WWE. It was like, oh, I wish I just stopped, if I kept using Pro Tools more, right? I
Yeah.
fallen out of it, so
Yeah.
just kind of looking out for stuff I don't wanna.
Don't want to miss out on.
You'll
yeah.
never have 100% of the
Yeah.
answers, but the great thing is that you have the opportunity to take a risk, and you'll find out really fast what the reward or the antithesis of that reward is really
Yeah.
fast.
100%.
But it's a good question.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, you're first getting started, what did you do to find clients? Cause it kind of sounds like you had a steady flow, or at least you have had consistent work throughout your career. And that hasn't been the case for everybody that's come to this class. So what have you done that's given you consistent work or clients that you can rely on or return work, things like that?
It's just quality. You've got to deliver the quality every time. And a lot, there's times where someone might have a budget and say, and you can feel that they don't want to spend more than they already spent. And that there's something you can do to really take it over the top where it's like, okay, now I think it's really done. It's fully cooked, right? And so what I would do is I would say, you know what, if you need to take a little extra time on something and make sure it's right, even if a client can't really afford to pay for it, let's say, I would just do it, because then you're, oh, they also got something extra, people always like the extras, if you give them something a little more than they're getting everywhere else, then they're likely to be return clients. So, I mean, I'm not saying work for free. I'm just saying, like, and most people can afford to just pay what you're asking, and you give them, you get full price. But every once in a while, you'll get in a situation where you can tell someone's a little tight. Just work with them, make sure it's good. But most of the time when people stop going somewhere, it's usually because they found something better somewhere else. They like the quality of something better. And I don't even think it has to do with price. I don't think it has to do with price. They're just happier with the product somewhere else. So just keep them happy. Yeah. Keep the people happy. Yeah.
Well, I asked a mastering engineer that a long time ago, and that was his answer.
Yeah.
You're here to serve somebody else's product.
Yeah.
Make them happy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, even if you have to kind of take a hit a little bit, it's okay.
Any other questions you got out there? Oscar? Okay, it's got one.
So I do have a question about AI a little bit. I've seen a few producers online talk about that and how it could help in the production side of music making. Just what are your thoughts on that, and how do you think it'll change?
Use it.
Use it.
Yeah. Use it. It's just a tool. I mean, at the end of the day, like, nobody knows what you did and nobody cares. They just know that they like what they're hearing. So, I mean, if AI makes the whole song, mixes and masters and sings it for you, and you put it out and everyone loves it, fine. You obviously put in the codes that made it do what it wanted, so.
And I think people have the wrong conception about AI so much. I mean, this could be a whole other conversation.
Sure.
Like, I generated some album artwork using AI, and I have all the prompts on the computer, it took me like 650 prompts to get it right.
Yeah,
Like, it's not like, make me a song and it just spits it out. I
Yeah.
mean, it'll make you a song, but is it what you want?
right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to, it's like anything else. You
Yeah.
have a website that you like, somebody programmed that. And they had to program it and they had to get nitty gritty to make it right.
Yeah.
They still had to know how to do it, even though they might have something to help them get it there faster. Maybe it's not hand coded anymore because they've got the, you know, those visualizations. The same thing as an artistry, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, it's a tool. And I tell you guys this in all my classes, like, you know, we have this thing on campus, like, you either have to tell the students how you feel about AI, they can either use it or they can't. And for those, because not in this class doesn't matter AI so much, but for you, like that are in my other classes, what do I tell you to use AI for?
Basically just to help get things started or to get a new idea or something like that.
Or take a look at this and tell me where I can improve,
Mhm.
right? And I feel that way 100% because you guys are gonna get stuck at some point, and we all do. We all have creative blocks. Use it. Use it to
hit that
break it.
checkbox on Canvas that said I didn't use it though, so.
Not a robot.
you don't have to use it.
I-
You don't.
Are
You
you
don't
are
have
you
to
writing a
use it.
report?
Yeah.
See, in the reports, then I want to check that. In your creativity, I don't care.
Yeah,
So it's just on everything on Canvas nowadays.
I know it's on
yeah.
there.
I mean, ultimately.
I can go back and look through and have it check everything.
Ultimately, you are the decider, right? You get to decide, you use the most important thing that you guys have is your tastes. And your opinion of, is it good or is it not? What does it need? What could it use? Have I done it? Okay, I've done it, now it's finished, right? You guys are the deciding factor, so, it's kind of like, DJing is a very like good way to describe like somebody's taste in music and whether it's jiving with the audience or not, right? You ever been to a wedding where the DJ's really bad, right? Well, the reason he's bad is he doesn't know what his audience really wants. He's not giving them what they want, right? And so, somebody whose opinion of what's good, if it's jiving with this group of people, then you're doing your job. So I think that if you're gonna use AI, just use your taste, use your opinion of, is this good or not? And like you said, make the adjustments, yeah.
Guys, got any more questions?
I got one more. So, cause you were mentioning like, auditioning like speakers and stuff. Is there any piece of gear that you got that like for your workflow, you're like, this is the best thing ever, like.
Oh, like
some-
a
some-
game
or-
changer, yeah.
Yeah, like, or something that like early on you were just like,
Yeah.
this is like, this is the first thing that I'm gonna get with like my big paycheck. Like, what was
Yes.
your
Yes.
like favorite first big purchases or
Yes.
favorite purchase over the years, you're like, should've gotten this soon.
I think I will answer your question. I think we should do a whole like 10-hour series on equipment. But anyway, so the
I
first purchase, it was really interesting. I could go way back and say, okay, the first purchase I made that I was like, whoa, that really sounds awesome, is I purchased a pair of preamps, SSL preamps. They were e-signature preamps, and I bought them just to track analog synths. They were like, I think they were like $3,000 a piece. And I just to record into like, I think I had an Apogee Rosetta. And I just remember I felt like, wow, those preamps really made a difference. And then going forward a little more, the next piece of gear that I thought, okay, that really made a big difference is I bought a microphone. It was called a Corby. Now I ended up selling it. And the reason I ended up selling it because I found other mics that I felt to be even more suitable for the kind of artists I was recording. But that mic was really cool because it had switchable capsules. and a couple of the capsules are really nice. And I felt like the quality, just like the top end clarity on that mic was really cool. And so I really liked that a lot. And then I would say the next piece of gear that I bought that I was like, okay, that's a game changer was I bought a pair of ATC speakers. They're ATC 50s. You have to use a sub. There's not enough low end on them. You have to use a sub, but the mid range that is going on those was game changer. I also bought a Lavery D to A converter, and the thing was $8,000. And that was that's my listening like DA converter, and that thing is just clean and clear. And I mean, that was a game changer for sure. And then I would say after that, probably was another game changer after that. I remember my Bricasti Reverb was also a game changer. That's like, but I don't use it through analog. I use it with its digital cable. That was a big deal. Recently, I purchased the Avid MTRX, and that thing has been a game changer because I can sync Pro Tools and Ableton and Cubase and Logic, and I can sync all these programs to Pro Tools, and I can take all the individual channels in any DAW, sync it to Pro Tools, and have it record each channel in Pro. So like, let's say you do all your beats in Ableton, which is what I do. And let's say you're at a studio and you record all your vocals in Pro Tools. And while you're there, you're like, oh, I want to kind of mess with the vocal just to make it sound a little nicer. And it's in Pro Tools, and you're like, okay, I got my vocals in Pro Tools, and I got my beats in Ableton. And now I want to mix, or now I want to like get it ready for mix or whatever. And like, I don't want to like take my vocals out of Pro Tools and bring them into Ableton because they sound different now. I don't know why, but they just sound a little different, right? I don't want to take my beat and hit the bounce button and then bring it into Pro Tools. Now it sounds kind of different. I kind of feel like I lost something, you know? And so what I decided is I want to take each individual channel, put it into individual channels in Pro Tools, hit the play button, and have everything play at once. And I don't have to take anything out of any DAW. And so I was able to do that. It requires an HDX card. It requires the MTRX, and it requires knowing a few things to get it to like sync properly. But what's cool about it is I can, while I'm listening to the vocals, I can tweak the stuff in Ableton without having committed. Because once you commit, if you want to shorten that reverb, you got to go back to Ableton, you got to redo the thing, you got to guess, and you got to rebounce it. Who wants to do all that? That's a pain.
So with that, you can have both programs open.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
can have
as long as your
three.
computer can handle it.
I can have 3-4 programs syncing to Pro Tools. I could have one guy who did something on Cubase and I did something on Ableton, and we did the vocals in Pro Tools, and I can sync. He sends me, as long as I got his plugins, I can sync all that together. I can track it all into Pro Tools, hit record, and it tracks all the individual instruments get recorded as audio into Pro Tools, or I can just monitor them. I can still hit the bounce button, or I can print audio of what's happening. So, but that was a game changer too. That's pretty recent though.
What's your favorite piece of inexpensive gear?
Oh gosh, probably the SM7B. That's the most inexpensive mic that actually sounds pretty dang good. I mean, okay, you got to run it through some nice equipment, but I mean, okay, I did a recording recently where I used, because it was a live band and they wanted to sound live, but it needed to sound kind of pop live, whatever that means. And, so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna use the SM7B because I want it to sound like we're hearing them at like at the show, right? So I use the SM7B. I plugged it into a 1073 BAE, and then I went into an LA2A, and it sounded great. Sounded fantastic. No problem with that whole. Trying to think, another inexpensive piece of gear. It's an interesting one because most of the stuff I like is very expensive.
Not inexpensive.
I mean, okay, what's not expensive? Like, what's
I
considered,
don't have a
what's
definition.
it?
What's not expensive to
Under
you
a
guys?
$1,000.
Under $1,000, okay. Under $1,000, for acoustic guitars, probably like a pencil mic, like a KM 184, something like that. Those are great. I mean, even if you have one, you'll get way better sounding acoustic guitars than you will using a 414. Don't use 414s on acoustic guitars. Don't do it. Don't use 414s on strings. Don't do it. 414s are great for palms.
Never used one. We use them on overheads a lot.
Yeah. They'd probably sound good on there. The older ones, the ones that are gray, the silver ones, those
XLS.
will sound good on other stuff. But yes. Sell your U87. Get rid of it. Sell it. Sell it.
I didn't say that.
Either that or you can use it as for a podcast.
Fun fact.
Yeah, okay, anyway, we can talk about, I'm telling you, I can talk about gear for hours and hours. So, but, yeah, any other questions that you guys anything you wanna know?
Well, you're nearby, so we'll, after we sign out, if the students wanna, get to know you better, they can reach out to you.
Sure.
You have a website you wanna share, or I
Sure,
can
yeah.
put it on,
Yeah, we
on-
can add it.
online, I'll
Yeah,
put it
yeah,
on
we
there.
can add it there. Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming in. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure. Again, I'm Professor Sansom. This is DAPR $300.
301.
301 hours. One of those classes. You'd think I'd know my own classes, but we just changed over all the numbers anyway. And so it's all good. But thank you for coming in. For all those watching online, thank you. And we'll see you all next week.